How do we evaluate 49ers playmakers for the rest of the season? Let's get into it. First, let's start with Jauan Jennings, who's the #1 receiver for Brock Purdy right now. He has tunnel vision, always throws to Jauan Jennings, especially the last 2 weeks. 91 yards, 93 yards, 11 targets in both of them, 7+ receptions in both of them, an elite play on a week-to-week basis, 16 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, and he's especially good on third down. But the #1 option in the 49ers passing game is still George Kittle on a week-to-week basis. You look at the consistency. Now, the targets, maybe not as substantial as Jauan Jennings, but he's the red zone guy. 14 fantasy points, 24 fantasy points, 15, 22, 20, 14, 20. He's got a touchdown in almost every single game this season. And him being out last week was a big reason why they lost. They weren't able to open up holes in the running game because people forget Kittle is an excellent blocker. What he's able to do with, Trent Williams on that left side, if McCaffrey's going to the left side, is open up those holes, block downfield. They haven't been able to do that. They weren't able to do that last week, which is a huge reason why they lost to Seattle. And next we look at Deebo Samuel. And a lot of people are wondering, well, why is Deebo not playing well? He's always been boom bust, of some games where he's 25 fantasy points, other games where he is at 0. Ayuk was a big part of that. Ayuk is a separator. He was top in separation rate in the NFL the last few seasons. He's not there. So they don't have a vertical threat who can really separate at an elite level. The Niners, I think, are last in yards after the catch and last in separation rate with their wide receivers, or close to it. You can look those up. But that's a big issue because Deebo's never been a separator. What he's been able to do is get the ball in space in, yards after the catch. They can't do that if there's not a guy downfield getting open every single play like Ayuk, or, Pearsall is starting to do that, but Brock Purdy doesn't seem to look Pearsall's way. I mean, Pearsall had 0 catches last week. This is a big reason why Deebo is not as successful. It's not that he's washed or he's, fat or slow. I think it's more that there's no separator in this offense this season. And as a result, with the McCaffrey injury earlier on in the season, with Kittle being out last week, there's always some injury to the offense, and that's why he hasn't been able to separate and utilizing him out of the backfield. I mean, the 49ers line play has been atrocious this season. Besides Trent Williams and Dominic Puni, they haven't been really able to do anything to create holes for running game either. And that's where we go into Christian McCaffrey. And a lot of people are wondering, is he still an elite guy? Of course he is. He just hasn't gotten the touchdowns yet. And Kittle being out was a reason why he had 19 attempts and only 80 yards last week. He's still an elite receiver as well. He had 5 catches, I think, in back-to-back games or close to that, at least 5 targets. And he'll get those touchdowns. They'll come this weekend. Finally, we go to Ricky Pearsall. 5.1 fantasy points, 11-17. You think he's going on this trajectory, then he has 2 targets out of all of a sudden. Part of that is Brock Purdy's injury. He has a shoulder injury. I think it's holding him back. Didn't look like himself last week. But I do think Pearsall, he's the most dangerous play for the 49ers playmakers on a week-to-week basis, even more dangerous than Deebo. But there's upside as well on a week-to-week basis because you see the 11 and then 17. I think that's more of who he is than the 0 and 5.1. As a result, Jauan Jennings is a must-start moving forward until we see something differently. Deebo Samuel has upside, but can be benched depending on who you have on the bench. If you have somebody like Calvin Ridley or somebody like Jauan Jennings, they play over Deebo Samuel at this point. Christian's still the #1 option on this team and a must-start on the week-to-week basis. And same with George Kittle, also a must-start. Remember, George Kittle being out was a huge part of why the Niners averaged, I think, 4.9 yards per catch instead of 7 to 9 that they've been averaging all season. Their DVOA is top 10. They're the only elite team on both sides of the ball that's 5-5. They've had, a bunch of blown fourth quarter leads. They're still an elite offense, okay? And you can trust most of these guys moving forward. Pearsall is risky. Obviously, Deebo is risky, but Jauan Jennings, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey are must starts on a week-to-week basis at this point.